change. Can I ask Kat, Mulham, and Martine to join me? I've got my timer here. We've got now 25 minutes to have a chat, and then we'll open the floor. This was inspiring. Those were very different stories of change, postcards from the future almost, telling us how the future could look like if we were to think collectively and rather in a togetherness way rather than a selfish way. The stories might look different because you're coming from very different kind of perspectives, but they all have some common thread, some common lines. They all speak to the sense of purpose on so many people that feel sometimes hopeless, that think, what can I do as an individual? It's too big, it's too complex. Those people are too powerful, governments won't listen. And yet, when you bring people together, when you start from the power within each individual, and then you build the power of the collective, of the community, then people not only do they find a sense of purpose and a positive sense of contribution, of pride, of I'm part of the solution, but also that gives us also strength to then challenge the powerful, to tell them enough, back off, this needs to change, and saying it very loudly. Who've been causing the problem, the wealthiest among the wealthy. And I guess my question to the four of you to start with is, from where you sit, do you think there is conscious? Do you think that when you go into those repair cafes, when you go into those high-level meetings, do you feel that Northern society, the global North, is aware of the role we need to play? And is there willingness to change? And then we'll get into how do we make it. Kat,
okay. Okay. Oh, man. Is there awareness? It is astounding to go into spaces where decisions are being made, like boardrooms of companies, and realize there are so many people still using the words global warming, not understanding or listening to the science that tells us that we are too late, and not just like I think it's really easy to take for granted the level of awareness because of the information out there. I had a conversation with a scientist from the Natural History Museum in London recently, the scientist, in fact, who has just become like the chief of their board of directors, who also was the advisor to the British government under Boris Johnson. He was the scientific advisor, and he said, never assume anyone knows anything about climate change. And it's like really sad that that's true, but I think like people, it's impossible not to hear it, right? Like it's impossible not to like hear the headlines, but also people are so stuck in their own echo chambers that I actually unfortunately think that there is still a lack of awareness in a lot of spaces. And in some cases, there are so many times that activists have stood up in front of like the CEOs of major oil companies now and said, like, this is enough, like you're destroying the planet and you have to stop. And the CEOs of oil companies continue to do what they're doing. And that is where I'm like, okay, that's not an awareness issue, right? Like there's no way, like we know that like the carbon footprint was created as a tool by oil companies to put the onus on individual action so that we as individual citizens will calculate our own carbon footprint and feel bad about it and feel guilty flying and feel guilty buying any petroleum products, while at the same time oil companies increase production, continue with marketing tactics that are shady as all heck, and keep making us buy things and force us into systems where we can't get public transport. They lobby against governments trying to put into place more access to like a livable future. And so I'm like, that's not an awareness issue, right? Like there's knowledge there, and there's attention, and there is a lack of willingness because there's no belief that the world could be any different. And quite frankly, it lines the pockets of people like that in positions of power who are protecting their own wealth. So that's not a very hopeful answer, but I do think it's an honest one, and it's something we have to contend with all the time as activists and as people who work in the space, is like, where can we influence and where can we make change, and who at the same time do we keep having to call out and call to attention and push back against, because there's always going to be that side of the story as well, you know?
Agreed. It's so disturbing to think that it's easier for everyone to think about a dystopic sort of future rather than think about uprooting capitalism, which is a system that we only had for a couple of 100 years in history. Martine, you surely have also a view on that sort of, are people more aware? Are people willing to change? Do you see a growing movement in that sort of willingness to repair things rather than buying and consuming?
We see that, but naturally we only see the people who come into repair cafes, so the ones who are already aware and the ones who want to change. But I still think that even the people who come into the repair cafe with their broken item don't realize that the change should be much bigger, that they should stop buying all this rubbish that is sold to them. And people think that they need electrical appliances for everything, where basically you don't need that many things. You don't need all these appliances. I think we should lead a much simpler life and realize that like I said in the presentation, that we cannot go on using the resources like they're endless. They're not. And future generations have a right to them too. So we should start to live within the boundaries of what the earth can supply. And we're not doing that. And I think that even people who are, coming to repair cafes and slightly aware that they're still don't realize how big the change ought to be to stay within the boundaries of what the earth can provide us.
Now, I guess, Francesc, the question is for you along those lines. Public administrations, governments, are they really aware? Do you understand how urgent things are? Or are we still in that sort of space where I was told 6 months in a public administration is a nanosecond for society? And it does feel like that sometimes, that everything goes too slow.
We are public administration. We know how long and how much time takes the improvement and to moving things to a right path. In this project, in some projects, we not only we try to change the feeling of the administrations. We tried that administrations can change by their own. Once we have tried to explain them and show them that there are some other possibilities for managing waste. For instance, a small example, we have been in a large collaboration with Bolivia Ministry of Environment since more than 10 years ago. The Ministry of Environment is called Ministerio del Ambiente y del Agua, Water Environment Ministry. Their most attention is put on water, but for them waste doesn't exist, not now, 10 years ago. We had to show them that one of the reasons why they have problems with water is due to the landfills, because landfills are contaminating groundwater. So they understood this, and they introduced in their corporation general direction of waste. So they have made some changes, and now they have making separate collection of bio-waste, and they're trying profit and recycling bio-waste through composting. So for us, it's a satisfaction. But not always we have the opportunity to change the administration behavior. because we try to make pilots to explain things and allow them to learn from their own experience.
Agree. And all of you are building pilots really out of the box. You've managed to think so differently from kind of going with business as usual. I'm really struck, Mulham, with your experience and how suddenly you collectively thought about a very different way to engage and use the talent of people who are in difficult situations. How did you do that? How do you create that sense of purpose and energy?
I feel that sense of purpose and energy comes from the individuals themselves, actually, who would join the team, usually our language partners. They have that sense, like they actually are, like one of them recently moved to Bahel. He moved recently to Ireland. Usually with NaTakallam, like the business model, because there's a business model, it's not like non-profit, and it's not for profit, it's a social enterprise. But like basically the business model is like $16 goes to NaTakallam per session. When there's a discount, it's even $13 to NaTakallam, and then $10 go to the language partner, and then this $3 of a difference is just like to cover transaction cost, operational cost. So it's totally a social enterprise. Going back to Bahel, who moved to Ireland recently and still is very active with NaTakallam. He's a language partner. He's giving his language sessions. It's not for the income. It's not about the $10 that he's getting per session anymore. It is actually, even though there's like a business model, it's more about like he feels as a part of a community. He feels that he can share part of his identity with NaTakallam. So that a sense of purpose comes, I think, from the individuals themselves rather than like NaTakallam giving any sense of purpose to anyone. It's just like enabling basically individuals to share their messages. And I wanted to comment about the picture that you have of the fan because I really like the repair Café. It's a bit of a tangent, but like for me, I have a fan that's broken. I have like also a dehumidifier that's broken. It also like feels a bit hard for me to throw them out. It's been in my place for like 2 years. So I'm really, yeah. And I'm really happy to hear that such a project exists. As
It's
Repair
about
Café.
timing. Repairing is about timing. Directly after something breaks, that's the time to repair. If not, you replace it, and then the broken item stays in your home, and then 1 year later you think, oh, I need to clean up, and then it's too late.
I would feel bad if I throw them out, so
No, you'll have
Yeah.
to repair
Hang
them.
on to them.
Now you have no excuse. We've got 10 minutes left. We're 5 fixers here in the room. We're about 300 fixers in the room today. So let's strategize. Let's build tactics. So you're communities of change. You've been able to create that sort of a seed of change within your communities. How do we take it to scale? I want to hear from all of you. Give us some recipes. How do we take it to scale? We need broader communities of change. We need a movement for change. How do we do it? I'm starting with you now, Martine. Give us some recipes. Martine.
Me? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, for me, obviously, the solution would be to start a repair cafe, because it's not just, just about repairing, but when you get the people inside, in the room, conversations emerge, and people start to realize what it's about. And they realize that they can contribute, that it's not far away, abstract, expensive, difficult. So I think for many people, the change feels frightening because it's unknown. It looks like, well, something we're not sure where to start. And my experience with Repair Café is that when you just start by making one repair, you realize that change is available for you, that it's within reach for you, that you can just start simple today on a small scale and inspire other people by talking about it, by not being ashamed of having a repaired item, by Well, that's my experience, that when I talk about what I do, people ask me, what do you do? And then I always get stories of broken irons and coffee makers, and it's always the same, that people know that it's wrong, and they want to make a change, but they just don't know where to start. So I think just start small, start today in your own home, and realize that you can make a difference too. And talk about it.
Mulham, how do we take to scale this?
I think I think for me it's the answer, like for me personally, and maybe for NaTakallam as well, but like the answer is easy. It's exploit the current exploitation system, which is the capitalist system. So
yes.
Exploit it to actually generate a revenue basically to people while actually maintaining a social aspect of it. So a social enterprise, I think, is a social like enterprise model is the model that we should try and follow more than just like for-profit model. So like it should be part of the goals of a company to actually be a social enterprise, but really for stockholders, not for not like a real goal. I mean, not just like the profit. Otherwise, I can't really see how things will change without having a revolution. So, like, I mean, with the current system, I feel like the only way is like to, again, like include the social aspect as a goal, as an end goal, not just like the profit as the end goal of any enterprise that exists. And that's, I think, what we did at NaTakallam, at least. It is, and that's actually on all level of NaTakallam. So we as a staff and as a management. So everyone at NaTakallam is kind of vocal internally as well to make sure that we are not focusing on profit. We are focusing on the social aspect of NaTakallam. By social aspect, I mean making sure that the language partners get an upward mobility, get compensated, but also the social aspect of creating better communities overall. Because the goal of NaTakallam is not just like for our language partners to earn income. It's also to make sure that the society actually can see their point of views, and because the integration is a two-way process, and the community needs to actually understand newcomers also. So I think we are building bridges, and that would also help the communities understanding the point of views and cultures of newcomers. So yeah, for me, it's like the shortest answer would be like to have that social aspect as a goal of an enterprise.
Yes, rather than just profits for a few, it's the social, how do you return to society?
Yep.
And how do you connect to society? Kat.
I've been really trying to think about a short answer for this. The short answer is, I think we already have the communities. Like, I think there's a rabbit hole when we start talking about climate solutions that like also encompasses like techno-utopianism, the idea that like technology is going to save us once we invent the right thing, or like we just need the right community to come together, or we just need the right model to figure out the solution. Like, I think the solutions are already happening right now all over the world in local communities, and I think like I absolutely agree there should be no business that does not have a social purpose. I think all businesses should be like doing good. Do I think capitalism is the system under which we're going to be able to solve our problems? I don't have a short answer for that one. We can come find me at the bar later and we'll talk about it. But I think like the communities already exist. The biggest thing is like, even those of us that work inside of organizations doing good, I also think we have to be engaging in our local community, where we live, the people around us. We should be talking to our neighbors. We should be part of cooperatives when they exist, and if they don't exist, we should start them. We should localize. Like, I think that there's definitely like an alignment that I personally have with like the degrowth philosophy, and also that doesn't mean isolating. That doesn't mean nationalism. It's not like an either or. I think we have to like embrace the complexity and nuance of the world we live in more and more, and actually find solutions that are relevant while to our local communities. Communities should be self-determining. I don't think there should be outside groups coming into communities and saying this is what you need to be doing, which means that like there needs to be land sovereignty for indigenous peoples. There needs to be like sovereignty for communities to decide what it is that is in their best interest, and there has to be resource and support and network where we can learn from each other. And this kind of, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I sound like I'm raving about a utopia, and maybe I am, because actually underneath all of this, we need the belief that something different is possible. And so we can continue to do this work so that we can go into our communities and build something that doesn't exist yet, not in the sense of new technology, but in the sense of deeper connection, in the sense of more collaboration, and in the sense of this like local but also global approach. I hope that made sense.
It does. And I don't think we're talking utopia here, we're talking protopias. You're demonstrating alternative realities. You're demonstrating that things can be done in a different way. But you're also reminding us that we're part of the solution, but that doesn't shy away from the fact that governments and those with decision-making power do have to play a role in it. Absolutely. Because when we're talking companies, where we're talking about indigenous rights, this is also about having the necessary legal mechanisms to hold governments to account, to hold corporates to account, to make sure that violation of human rights is taken to justice, and that those communities that have been affected to have real right and real access to justice. So we're not being naive here, but we're recognizing the power within us. Francesc, how do we take it to scale? How do we make sure that those like yourself with decision-making power will listen to civil society? Not just in these rooms, but in rooms where real decisions are being made. How do we get into those rooms?
We as a public administration has the responsibility and also the duty of giving a second opportunity, not only waste, bio-waste, but also people. In this project, you could see is a project of social inclusion, giving second opportunities to people that perhaps has not in their life have opportunity of working or having a good training. I think this is important. Both are in a need, are a must. We have to work, of course, because it's our area of occupation, having a better environment for ensuring health of people and the planet at all. But we should not forget persons, people, human needs in this case, because at the end is the reason of all what we are doing. So we are very happy in this case because we are sure that those small projects are the seed of future projects in those countries. We have the knowledge, we know how to do it, but they have to do by their own. And now we think that they have the opportunity to spread and to enlarge their experiences. So I think this is the path. Perhaps not large projects, small projects, decentralized, and giving the opportunity them to learn from their own and to take profit of their experience to improve their regions and countries.
Thank you. So holding to that thought, we're uprooting the capitalist system, and we'll do it. This is a time of hope. This is a time of taking action. This is a time of fixing the future. So this was the first appetizer. We've got still 5 minutes if there's any burning question or comment from the room. That's unusual.
It's because it's lunchtime.
Lunchtime.
Yes, hi, thank you. Thanks very much, and thanks for presenting your projects, really, really inspiring. I wanted to maybe ask, it's a general comment, for what will, if you could develop a little bit more, what's the role of youth in these communities for change? You've all been talking about that, but maybe just, go a bit deeper on that. Yeah, or maybe one phrase that you would say to young people who are mobilizing, activating themselves. Maybe one of you can say like a phrase to young people who are doubting about what do I do, no, to be part of these communities for change.
How do we connect to the youth? And how do we do it in an intergenerational way rather than having silos by generation? Kat, Martine?
I think I'm a bit biased here. Youth are everything. No, I think obviously like everything that we do at Forces of Nature is for and by young people. And just like the crisis is complex and interlinked, so too is like everything we do, right? So the reality is for young people, like we are part of a much bigger system. And we're a core part of that system. But I think for anyone that's like feeling doubt or uncertainty, those are normal feelings. Like honestly, like embrace those feelings. I think we have to also move away from trying to absolve ourselves of difficult emotions, because reality and the human condition is much more nuanced than that. And the work that you're doing is valuable. Do it with people who see you. And it's just a continuous like support system for one another. And I think intergenerational exchange is super important and is core to everything. Like we can't, just as we can't keep having conversations in an echo chamber of people who have the same beliefs as us, like one of the quickest ways out of that is to talk to someone of a different generation. The other quickest way out of it is probably to go and speak to your